Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Proper Pauper Pirate. It's a new video series we're going to be trying to do weekly. Not decided yet if we are going to do a lot of gameplay with this particular series or if I'm going to have that relegated to the Twitch stream. If you haven't followed me on Twitch, please do so. That is where all the gameplay, at least the live gameplay, is going to go towards. I'm going to use YouTube more for just pre-recorded content, as well as if I do live streams with just community members or just other things surrounding the game of Magic the Gathering. So gameplay will most likely be over at Twitch until further notice. So if you're interested in watching this particular deck, go and follow twitch.com/RogueDeckBuilder, and we'll try to play this game. Don't have a lot of time to play today. I've been pretty busy with some events going on right now in the Magic the Gathering community, and I'll be in a podcast a little bit later with Tasty Snackies. So unfortunately, we will not have any gameplay on this particular video. All right, so this is Murasa Tron. This is the updated list of Murasa Tron. This is the list that I like from a card from M19. Called Elvish Rejuvenator, and I think that this deck really pushes this archetype to the top. It does exactly what this deck wants. It replaces, in my opinion, is a good replacer for cards like Crop Rotation or Expedition Map in multiples, and you can go all that on the Elvish Rejuvenator. For now, I'm trying a 4 of Elvish Rejuvenator just because it's done such a great job finding the Tron for me, as well as putting out a chump blocker, which is what this deck has had an issue with in the past. I just played some test games with it, went 4-0, beat Goblin Storm, beat the Bogles, and beat the Jun Hackblade deck, and beat a Scred Delver. So that's pretty, at least the Hackblade and the Delver and Bogles, that's pretty normal. You'll see those in the meta. And all the games were very, very down to the wire, down to like 2-3 life when I did begin to stabilize. And Elvish Rejuvenator was a key piece in a lot of those matchups, being able to block a 3-2 Hackblade, for example, and then be able to assemble Tron and then have the Flicker combo with Tron. So if you don't know how this deck works, Murasa Tron is different than what we call Hulk Tron, and there is a Skip a Combat Tron as well. There's a few different variants of Tron. This, I think, has been the version that's been around the longest. It doesn't really matter what your win condition is. The win condition is going to be something like either Capsize or Dinrova Horror, or something, Capsize, Dinrova, or something like Rolling Thunder is usually going to be the win cons. Hulk Tron is a different variant of Tron where it tries to beat down with the big creatures. So stabilize with the Fangrean Marauder to gain a bunch of life, and then it tries to get an Ulamog's Crusher to just win the game. So I tried Elvish Rejuvenator in a Hulk Tron build and absolutely hated Elvish Rejuvenator because I think there's a little bit of a diminishing returns in Tron if you cannot utilize like the 5th and 6th Tron land. You want a deck that it wants to be able to eat up as much mana as possible, and this is exactly that type of deck. Hulk Tron, once you get to your 8 mana, you really don't have a use for the mana after that. So let's go over the deck tech with this deck. It's going to, of course, have the Tron lands, so that is going to be the big bulk of your lands. The tower, the power plant, there's as mine. If you're not familiar with how Tron, why they call it Tron, is you assemble the Tron, all the pieces. If you have one of each of these pieces, they then add for double the mana, and Urza's tower adds for triple the mana. So it is going to be able to be an engine for a lot of your rinse and repeat type cards. We're going to run Thornwood Falls as a 4 of because you can see that the vast majority of all of our mana is going to be either green or blue. So the Thornwood Falls is going to be our de facto go-to tap land for this deck. We are going to be running a 1 of Remote Isle. Remote Isle can be cycled and then brought back with the Murasa, Pulse of Murasa, to be cycled again if you need to. That's what I really like about this deck, is it has a huge toolbox feel to it. We're going to run 4 Painted Bluffs. You can also run the other version of Shimmering Grove. Shimmering Grove is what I think it's called. Anyway, they do the same thing, but this one's just more recently reprinted in Amonkhet as a desert. Painted Bluffs, just add a colorless mana pool or 1 and tap, add 1 mana of any color. I believe there's 2 others that exist that do the exact same as this land. So the other toolbox field is going to be in Mortuary Mire. We can put a creature back on top of our library that has been killed. That's really good with the Mnemonic Wall we'll talk about in a second. Same thing with the Haunted Fengraf. Haunted Fengraf can be used to sacrifice to then return it, which also has a nice synergy with Pulse of Murasa to then get back a land if you need to go that route rather than a creature. And then we also have a Bojuka Bog that is going to be good in like the mirror type decks and any other deck that utilizes its graveyard. The Bog is going to be able to exile the graveyard completely. And again, it's something that then can be, if you have a way to kill a land with like crop rotation, then you can get it back with Pulse of Murasa and re-exile their graveyard. So there's a lot of little finer points of this deck that can get you out of some tricky situations. So speaking of crop rotation, it's a one of in this deck just for that reason. It still gives a toolbox feel. Elvish Rejuvenator has made it so you can cut down to some of these decks have 2, 3, 4 copies of crop rotation. Same thing with Expedition Map. Expedition Map's 1 and then 2 in sack to search your library for a land card, reveal it, and put it in your hand. Since we're running Elvish Rejuvenator, it just is on curve better than Expedition Map in my opinion. Like you're usually cracking Expedition Map on sometimes on turn number 2, but it's more likely turn number 3. And at that point, you could just be casting an Elvish Rejuvenator, and this doesn't chump block. It doesn't have a lot of the synergies with this deck. So one other thing with crop rotation is crop rotation, if just to read it out here, as an additional cost to cast it, you sacrifice land, and you can search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. So it comes to play untapped, and you can get any land. So a lot of times you can sacrifice like a Painted Bluffs to then go get your last piece of Tron, have it come into play untapped, and still be able to utilize that mana that turn. So in Hulk Tron, it's a much more powerful card to be able to sacrifice artifact lands to gain life off of like the Fangering Marauder. In this one, there is no artifact lands and there is no Fangering Marauder, so that combination's not going to be in this deck, but you still want the crop rotation for the toolbox feel to go get one of these either Bogs, Fangrafs, or Mortuary Mire. I've seen, or Remote Isle, and I've seen a few other decks that actually will put in a few other toolbox like Quicksand. I don't think that Quicksand is really necessary in this meta. Possibly it is versus a lot of the more aggressive decks that are coming out, but that's just my 2 cents with that card. We're going to run Impulse as the other way to dig. Impulse is going to look at the top 4 cards of your library, put one in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library. I like running 2 of these as it seems to be the sweet spot to find Tron or find exactly a Fog Effect or a Pulse of Murasa or any other card at that point. Impulse is the best way to find the specific card, instant speed. One of Prohibit, just because Prohibit works with the Mystical Teachings toolbox. Mystical Teaching allows you to get an instant. Prohibit's your instant counterspell. 2 mana counterspell with converted mana costs 2 or less, or if you kick it, it's 4 or less. So don't like running a lot of counterspells in this deck because you're not really worried about a lot of control, and it's aggro that you have to be able to stabilize against, and Prohibit isn't the best card versus a lot of these aggro decks this day and age. So just a one of. The Moment's Peace is our go-to Fog Effect because you can utilize it twice. So we're going to run 3 of these. I've had one in the main board at different times, or in the sideboard at different times, but I think 3 will get the job done. Again, this deck is really good with either the Mystical Teachings or Forbidden Alchemy or Impulse to find the Moment's Peace, and then you only need like 1 of them, and a lot of times you can then start getting it back with the Mnemonic Wall. So 3 is the right number. You do need 4 Prophetic Prisms. Prophetic Prisms allow you to add any mana of any color to your mana pool, and when enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So it's a good little cantrip artifact that helps you fix out your mana base once you do have these Tron lands assembled. And Simic Signet is also pretty decent for this deck because it can allow you to ramp in to, like, on the same turn, cast an Elvish Rejuvenator and something like a Prophetic Prism or an Impulse or a Moment's Peace or something on that pivotal turn where you need that mana to double cast multiple cards in a turn. And also it is the best way to get both the green and the blue. Forbidden Alchemy is another Impulse type effect. This time it'll go through top 4 cards of your library, and it also has Flashback, and then it puts the rest of them in the graveyard. So that's the big key difference between Impulse. You actually do want cards in your graveyard because this is a graveyard toolbox deck. So therefore, Forbidden Alchemy is going to be adding things to that toolbox by putting it directly into your graveyard. Ghostly Flicker is one of the combo pieces of this deck. This allows you to exile 2 target artifacts and creatures or lands and then return those cards to your battlefield. So you can get value off of non-evoked Mulldrifters. The combo is actually Mnemonic Wall and then the Dinrova Horror. If you have this out, you can then Ghostly Flicker and Mnemonic Wall, get back Ghostly Flicker. You're also flickering the Dinrova Horror, which is going to be returning opponent and making your opponent discard a card. So eventually, with enough mana, you'll be able to lock out your opponent opponent, and that is why I'm saying that this doesn't have the diminishing returns effects that other Tron decks have, because the more mana the merrier in this deck, especially when you have done or assembled the combo. So Pulse of Murasa, or we talked about Rejuvenator against the battlefield. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You put a land card from among them on the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This is going to hopefully find a Tron land at that point, but it can find any land. That's what's so cool about this card. It's not, people say, well, Wood Elves is strictly better. It can go get a forest untapped. Not when you can get any land. This is exactly the deck that wants it on turn 3 to go get a Tron land. You're going to hit, out of the top 5 cards, you're usually going to find a Tron land, just statistically speaking, because there's 12 of them and 5 cards. Yeah, more than likely you're going to find a Tron land. And more than likely you're going to find, a lot of times, multiple Tron lands, so pick and choose which one goes in the battlefield. Pulse of Murasa is another key card because it's a whopping 6 life you gain just by casting the spell. Returns a creature or a land card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is also fun with like the Haunted Fengraf. Like I said before, if you crop rotation to Bog, you can then Bog again. You can get back a remote Isle to cycle again, but usually you're going to use Pulse of Murasa to get back a Mulldrifter. Mnemonic Wall is kind of fun with Pulse of Murasa too, because then you can get Pulse early just to gain life, then get it back with Mnemonic Wall, and then if Mnemonic Wall dies, you can Pulse it back to get a Mnemonic Wall, rinse and repeat over and over again. So Mystical Teachings, this is a really, really powerful card in this deck. It's very mana hungry, and this is the deck that is very capable of providing the mana needed. 4 mana, you go get any instant card or a card with flash and put in your hand, and then 6 mana flashback. It's going to go find your Ghostly Flickers, your Pulse of Murasas, your Moment's Peace, those type of cards. Your sideboard adds a lot more cards that can be found with Mystical Teachings. So again, this has the toolbox type feeling to it. We talked about Mnemonic Wall. It comes into play, returns an instant sorcery. There's a new 2/2 that just was printed, but it's a little more difficult on the mana base being 2 blue. Well, actually, there's just a 2 and 2 blue. They can go back and get an instant sorcery. But again, Mnemonic Wall is the go-to one de facto for this particular deck, because not only does it have a nice body as a 0/4, the mana is a lot easier for this deck to pump out the just 1 blue rather than 2 blue. A lot of times you won't save the mana cost when you have to filter it through something like Prophetic Prism or a Painted Bluffs. So 5 mana is where this card is going to be if it were a dual colored card that does a similar ability. Mulldrifter, usually evoke this early, and then later on it can actually be used as a win condition as a 2/2 flyer. It's not uncommon to win the game by just stubbornly attacking your opponent that haven't given up, because you have this like recurring cycle assembled. Mulldrifter can be your win con, so it allows you to play less win cons as a 2/2 flyer can get the job done. Dinrova Horror is our finisher for this deck. I actually am running 2 finishers. I'm not sure if this is the route to go with this deck, but I'm running a one of Rolling Thunder, just because Rolling Thunder can also be used as an early board wipe. That then you can get it back, so it can help you stabilize, especially against Scred Delver. I really like this to get rid of a bunch of fairies and ninjas at that point, and then start to get ahead with the Rolling Thunder, because usually you have to hit this for an obscene amount of mana to be a win con, which will eventually happen. So it will threaten the board. It will threaten your opponent's life total if given enough time, enough mana or enough turns with getting it back with Mnemonic Wall. If you have like double Mnemonic Walls out and Ghostly Flickers, that's a way to do it. But I prefer Dinrova Horror, because Dinrova Horror works perfectly with the Ghostly Flicker. The more mana, the merrier. You can then start doing Mnemonic Wall, Dinrova Horror, flicker them both, and eventually get rid of your opponent's entire board, because this one states you return a permanent that also includes lands, and then they have to discard a card. So if they're down to top deck mode, at that point, it becomes land destruction. You force them to return a land, they discard it. And then again, if you have a ton of mana, it's every 3 mana is a Ghostly Flicker combo for this. So Dinrova is my go-to de facto finisher for this deck. So the sideboard is very open to whatever's hot in the meta at the moment. Right now I have a Coalition Honor Guard, because this, if you get it out, is very difficult for like a bunch of decks to lightning bolt it. It absorbs a lightning bolt or any other 3 damage spell, and if they have a card that can target something, it has to target Coalition Honor Guard, and it comes in handy versus decks like Inside Out. There are a ton of different decks where this just eats out so many spells by the time they can take care of it. We're going to run a Circle Protection green and red. You can put blue or black in here as well. You can even put white if you are worried about like the mono white heroic deck. But red and green seem to be the most threatening right now in the meta. Red is anything from Burn to the Jund Hackblade deck to tons and tons of decks. Even Atog it can come in against. Circle Protection Green's really in here for Stompy. I don't know if you'd bring it in versus Elves. Probably would. I think it's decently viable versus Elves. A lot of times versus when they spread it really wide, Moment's Peace is just better. So Circle Protection Red is great versus Fling, though, and Atog for just having a little more padding against those type of decks. A lot of decks aren't prepared to actually deal with these enchantments. Then we have a win of Dispel. This can come in just as another target for the mystical teachings. Is just dispel something when you get in a counter war with Inside Out or with Delver. Hydroblast is coming in versus Red, of course. That's no brainer here. Same thing with Pyroblast. We're running a 3 Hydroblast and 2 Pyroblast just because we are a little bit more worried about red decks at the moment than blue decks. This deck does tend to do very well against either grindy blue decks or control blue decks. Capsize can be brought in as another alternate win condition, as another way you can tutor it up with Mystical Teachings. Once you have the 3 buyback mana, it ends up being a 6 mana return to permanent. Eventually, you get rid of all your opponent's lands. Another very good card when you start to assemble a ton of mana. I don't like it in the main right now because I think Dinrova does the job. But decks that you might want another win condition if they can exile your graveyard, if they can somewhat deal with it in Dinrova. You want to have a backup, you bring in Capsize. Then we have an Ancient Grudge, another great thing to get with the Mystical Teachings. Good against Affinity, good against Kadatha Boros, destroying those artifacts. Electrickery, another tutor card can be tutored up with Mystical Teachings to take care of the go wide strategy. Sometimes Moment's Peace isn't enough. You need to at least clear the board once. Going to come in versus Elves, going to come in versus Inside Out, going to come in versus a lot of the faster either token brews or goblins or I don't know if Stompy would bring it in, but really in it for Elves and he'd bring it in versus Delver as well. Speaking of Delver, Serrated Arrows I found is the key card in this matchup. I'm running 2 copies of Serrated Arrows just because I'm running 2 copies of Ghostly Flicker. It makes a great Ghostly Flicker target. A lot of people have saved the Ghostly Flicker for the combo. You can easily use the Ghostly Flicker early and then plan on getting it back with Mnemonic Wall later on. So flickering something like Serrated Arrows before you've used all of its tokens, or actually, yeah, because it dies once you have no tokens. So you've used 2 of them, which you usually flicker it to use the 3rd, and then it sticks around to kill 3 more things. Pretty good combo with Ghostly Flicker, Serrated Arrows. And when you're playing that grindy matchup versus Delver, or Inside Out's another one, this is a key card for those matchups. And then Ulamog's Crusher's the Mirror Breaker. This is the card that comes in. It's very difficult for other Trons to deal with it because they're trying to fog as well. And this is going to push you ahead in that matchup. So that's really what it's in here for. You can bring it. It'll come in versus other various control decks. Or mid-range decks in Pauper, which are few and far between all the times. But this is specifically for, I would say, the Mirror, the Ulamog's Crusher. So there you have it. That's kind of a more in-depth, very in-depth deck tech for it. We don't have time to do any gameplay of it today, but be looking for it maybe tomorrow or the next day, Wednesday, Thursday on Twitch, twitch.tv/roguedeckbuilder. Again, that's where I'm going to try to go with more of the gameplay. I think gameplay works better in live stream than it does on the YouTube. I probably will do some proper Pauper Pirates for YouTube where I do gameplay. We'll do a little bit mix and match. I'm also going to be starting a video series where I'll be talking about a deck and a deck tech. It'll be more highly edited. You won't have this kind of MTGO layout where you can, where it'll be more of a showcasing cards through editing software and then showing clips of when I talk about specific instances. So I'll be talking about, Ulamog's Crusher go in the mirror, and then I can fade to a clip where, it comes in versus the mirror, and that'll give you an overall better view of how this game works out. Maybe going to do that for Arena, a lot of the Arena decks. So anyway, I thought I'd at least get a video out. I'm going to try to be producing at least 1 video per day. That's my goal for August. But I get distracted a lot, and we'll see how well that works out. If you're interested in buying this deck, we will have this up at roguedeckbuilder.com for purchase. So this is a great way to support the channel. Highly encourage you to do so. We are in some very scary times here with Wizards closing their distribution directly to local game stores, and also with the drama going on with a local game store being shut down to the outrage culture. This is the way, if you like content producers, this is how it's going to have to be done to support them in the future. Unfortunately, we are getting even more and more cliquey in the Magic the Gathering community. I've lost basically all my sponsorships back in November when I was more outspoken about the community issues. And I wouldn't be lying if I would be telling you it's been all clear sailing since then. It's been a lot tougher without that, kind of safe revenue stream coming in or motivation to be doing videos. And all of your Patreon donations and buying decks at Rogue Deck Builder, buying playmats are so I'm so thankful for. You guys have been awesome to me. One last shill for Rogue Deck Builder. We've had a lot of people sign up for the $20 Pirate Splendor tier. If you're looking to get cheap sealed product, I'd love to be that person that sells you product at cost. We just require you to have a small donation per month, and you have access to unlimited in-stock or things that are easy to order from the distributors at cost for that small donation per month. Check out our Patreon for more info on that, or check out the link in the description below in the video description. Anyway, this has been Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.